I want to explain you a very important thing about your emotions, because there's so many people that I meet through my work that are, afraid to feel their emotions and not in touch with their emotions and, don't know how to deal with their emotions. And I just feel so called to help because I know how to do it, and I'm not saying it in from an arrogant place. This is just part of my work and part of the things I had to really learn. And I know how liberating it can feel if you know how to, regulate your emotions, feel your emotions, and just be with your emotions, because a lot of us try to get away from them, and that I think is not very helpful, because it hurts us often more when we're trying to get away from our emotions. So let's talk about this. It's going to be a short and juicy one, so let's get right into it. But before we do, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Vanessa. Nice to meet you, and everybody, thanks for tuning in and for coming back. I love to make these videos for you, with you, and so let's dive right in. Yeah, like I said, our emotions are like a huge topic, and in different videos I talk about this a lot, and how to process and how to feel. And today I really want to tell you there is no bad emotion. All our emotions are messengers, and the important differentiation is we have emotions in the moment, and we have emotions that tell us historic stories, historic content. So sometimes when we feel triggered, we're triggered in a sense of we're, like an old wound. So something happened in the past that hurt us. A wound is created that has an emotional signature, so to say. And that means you carry that wound with you in your nervous system. So every time there is like the same pain in a way, triggered, that can be a completely different context, a completely different situation. So let's say in your childhood you felt unseen by your parents, or you felt misunderstood. And the wound is created that every time you're being authentic and you're asking the questions you're curious about, or you're expressing yourself in the way that feels most natural for you, it doesn't feel safe, because you've learned as a child, when I do that, I will be misunderstood. And that may make you feel afraid, that will make you feel, possibly could make you feel ashamed, embarrassed, whatever. Everybody feels differently, but just for the sake of giving an example, let's take this one, because I think it's relatable. So if you felt like that, every time in adulthood, somebody, maybe you're trying to express yourself authentically, you're giving a speech and somebody in the audience laughs, you feel immediately it's about you. Maybe they didn't even laugh about you, but you project onto it like, oh God, and then you feel triggered and you're like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. They probably laughed because I said a word wrong, or the way I'm standing, or how I'm dressed, or how I look, So we interpret, we see the world as we are. And the way that we are is not always, in our center, because we have experiences in our life and learnings in our life that condition us either positively or negatively, in the sense that it creates, within us wounds, and within us blockages where we feel like we need to be more, or we need to be less ourselves. Yeah. So that's important. That is when an emotion comes up that is historic. So when you feel triggered in somebody saying, what are you saying? And you're like, oh my God, what am I saying? Instead of feeling in your power and being like, this is what I have to say. Maybe you don't understand. Tell me, maybe I can explain you. Yeah. This is like when we are in a natural state, but when we are in a wounded state, we can either go the way where we're like, what do you mean you don't understand? And we can feel like we need to be more and overpowering, or we feel like, oh God, you don't understand, I'm so sorry. Do you understand the different energies? So we will either retract and diminish ourselves, or we will try to overpower often. And I also want to say that there is a time to there's like, our emotions are always valid. So whenever they come up, we don't need to judge them. And this is just something we've learned so strongly, to judge our emotions. But what we can learn instead, and this is something we need to practice for our brain to remember, okay, instead of judging myself for being angry or for being embarrassed or for feeling sad, how about I feel the emotion? So I sit with it and I realize I'm feeling sad. Oof, okay. And maybe sometimes if you're a very emotional person, you pick up from the surrounding or from what's going on in the world the energy of sadness. Maybe it's not your own. So it's good to ask yourself sometimes, is it mine or not? Am I projecting, or is this happening right now in the moment? Or is this an old wound that's being triggered? Yeah. And we don't need to dwell in our emotions, right? Because a lot of people say like, yeah, but I don't want to feel sad all the time. I don't want to sit and feel my emotions. And that's when I say, it's not about dwelling in your emotions. It's not about being the sad person, being the victim, being the, angry person. It's not about dwelling in it and staying in it. It's about feeling through the cycle of what you're feeling right now, and maybe letting the emotion be there without needing to constantly react to it. Like, I can be angry and it's valid. It's not about, here's what I want to say. It's not about, getting rid of our emotions. It's not about getting rid of our emotions. A lot of people on their internal growth journey, on their spiritual journey, on their self-development journey, they often mix up like learning how to regulate your emotions and learning how to process historic, like old wounds, historic emotions. Often people mix that up with, oh, I need to get rid of all my emotions. No, your emotions are needed. You know why? Because if you get angry about something, it tells you somebody is like crossing your boundary. If you get sad about something, it means like, oh wow, this person or this opportunity or this experience really meant something for me. If you're grieving somebody, a loss, like, you may never get rid of the grief itself, like you can feel through it and process like the loss and everything. And this is good, this is necessary. And you can learn how to allow the grief to be a positive thing, where you know that it means you really love that person, no matter if they're still alive or not. Another example, we can go through 1,000 examples. I'm just using those that I come up with right now. And remember them in, whenever grief comes up, remember positive moments. Feel the feeling, feel the sadness, but also remember, oh wow, I'm thinking of them. So maybe if this is something you believe in, or can give a benefit of a doubt to, maybe they're around me and maybe I don't need to be sad. It's okay to be sad, but let's not dwell in it. Let's remember, oh, maybe I'm thinking of them because it's a nice moment and I love them, because grief also means how deeply you love. And so we don't want to get rid of our emotions because they tell us important things. Like when you are dating somebody and you're feeling very calm and comfortable with someone, but you're also having butterflies and you feel like, whoa, I really feel for that person, and you feel maybe super happy and euphoria. So you want to know, because your emotions tell you how you feel around different people, how you feel about different opportunities, how you feel about, your loved ones, your work, your clients, and we shouldn't only, take our emotions into account to make decisions, but it is also giving us information about what feels good, what doesn't feel good to us, what feels, challenging in a positive sense, like what gives us a little bit of fear, but it's actually a cool opportunity, and it also gives us excitement, it gives us a step forward. It gives us drive and passion, Feeling is, feeling emotions gives us information about, like our life, and we don't want to get rid of our emotions. Also not the bad, like there are no bad emotions, but also not the difficult ones, because they also tell us like when our boundaries are crossed, when we're not feeling good with people, when we feel disrespected and all these kind of things, when we feel something doesn't work for us, or we want to change something in our life. When you're always sad when you come home from work, what does it tell you? Maybe that this is not your job. Maybe that's not the place for you. Maybe that's not the people for you. So don't see your emotions as an enemy, because they're actually on your side. And once you start accepting that the emotions are there, I had a session with a client today, and he is going through a very difficult time with physical pain. And, he was not accepting that this is what is happening right now. And all he wanted was to get rid of the pain. And a lot of people have that with emotions. Get rid of the emotions. But this is as if you want to cut off your arm. You want to cut off a part of you. We need to start accepting first and foremost that our emotions are here. And they're not here to harm us. We learned that, oh God, I don't want to feel that. Oh God, this is uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar, and that's why it's uncomfortable. It doesn't make it wrong. You need your emotions. They're really, really important messengers. What you need to learn, though, is to get used to the sensations of processing emotions, of feeling it through instead of dwelling in it. And also, like when it's time to change something, when it's time, when you felt sad or anxious for 3 months or longer, maybe it's time to learn how to process your emotions. Because they are telling you something, and if it's hard for you to do that by yourself, consult a practitioner, get in touch with me if that resonates, or any other practitioner, or clinical therapist or whatever that you trust and feel connected to, or try different modalities like breathwork. I do this once a month online if you ever want to join. There are so many modalities you could try to help you process and get in touch with your emotions and learn the language of your emotions, because this is going to be a really important and useful tool. Nobody teaches us this in school, and though it's so important, it's one of the most important things, and I'm preaching this every day to myself and everybody else I know, now to you as well, so welcome to the club. Learning how to regulate, process, name your emotions is a true life tool, because you will need it in your job, you will need it in your family, you will need it in life. You will just need it everywhere, because the biggest problem in the world is that we are really bad communicators, and we're afraid to communicate. We're already afraid to say when some situation is weird and we don't understand what somebody's doing. Most people are even afraid to ask, like, hey, sorry, I don't understand what you're doing. Can you explain me? Or if somebody doesn't know what somebody else is saying, we will just not say something. Or we are in a conflict with somebody and we will just shut up. No, guys, it's enough with this. We have to learn to communicate. And in order to become better communicators, we need to be aware of, yes, our thoughts, but also the emotions that are coming up within us when there is a situation happening, positive or challenging, easy or challenging. I had a situation with a collaborator today, and it was challenging. And I learned to avoid, I grew up with emotionally avoidant parents. So I know how it feels like when somebody doesn't want to talk about discussions. I was always the child who would go to my parents and be like, can we talk about this? Because they would give me the silent treatment, or just ignore the situation and put butter on top and honey on top. But I would always go and say, like, can we please talk about this? And at some point I think I unlearned doing that, for a while because they didn't do it, so I didn't feel encouraged to keep on going with that. So I often learned as an adult in my early adulthood to avoid conflict. And that helps nobody, because if you don't show who you are, if you don't tell people what is not right, what doesn't work for you, or what you really want, do you want Thai food or do you want Indian food? It starts with that. And most people are like, I don't care, you can choose. Just because they don't want to upset the other person or they don't want to rain on their parade. Have an opinion. But this is something that we need to learn, because it feels vulnerable, it feels crunchy, it feels unfamiliar. It feels like the other person's going to scream at me, or even if it's unrational. Maybe you grew up with parents who were emotionally explosive, or it was really hard for you to maybe they were not emotionally available in some way, maybe in a nice way, and they were just like putting everything under the carpet and said like, sweetie, it's okay, we don't need to talk about it. Or they were like, I don't want to talk with you, or like more like my one of my parents. But what I've learned is it's so important to communicate. And I had this conversation with a collaborator today, and I felt triggered already for a while, and I was like, I need to talk with her about this. So today was the moment that I had to talk with her about it. And it went really well, because there was no, I was used. So my subconscious is still, when you grow up a certain way, your subconscious is used to certain things that are part of your wounding going a certain way. So in this example, for me, conflict going into screaming and then silent treatment or avoidance and not talking about it, no resolve, no repair of the situation, of the relationship. You would just treat it silent or not at all for so long until you start talking to each other again. And I never enjoyed that, but that taught me, okay, this is how conflict goes. So I had a really, obviously in my adult years and doing the work that I do, I have had now so much more positive experiences with conflict. But today I had to deal with a collaborator who's also a good friend. And when that happens, it's extra difficult, for me, because I obviously love the person and I don't want our relationship to rip apart. And I had to just be honest with them today and say, look, this is how I feel. And then they called me and they said, all right, let's talk about it. And it was the most beautiful conversation. So you can be surprised, and you can learn that conflict doesn't need to be one way. It can be mature, it can be loving, it can be respectful, it can be people hearing each other out. And if that's not the case, then maybe you need to speak up and say, look, boundary. This is not okay to speak to me like that. I'm not that child anymore, And again, this is one example of a million. But you probably have now similar things for you coming up, or other situations that you can, compare this to. And so let me just tell you, all your emotions are valid. And it's also very important to not, suppress them, hold them back, because they give you so much information about life. And then in a second step, it's really useful to learn how to process them and how to, let's say in simple terms, deal with them, because you're not going to get rid of your emotions. I'm sorry. Even if you suppress them and avoid them, they're still there, and then they may come back at you through physical issues, through issues with people. If you're in constant struggle with dealing with people in some way, maybe universe, source, God, life, however you want to call it, wants to tell you need to learn how to express yourself in a mature way, in a graceful way, and that takes some time to learn. So I just want to encourage you today. The goal is not to get rid of your emotions. You need them. They're your allies. They're not your enemies. And all you got to do, and I know it takes some practice, but is to learn how to name them, how to observe them, that they are there, recognize them, how to name them, how to communicate them, how to process them. And then this is an amazing life tool. I'm going to leave you with this today. Hope that helped you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, subscribe. It helps the channel, please. I love creating these videos, and I would love to share them with more people, so I would love your support in doing so. Leave a comment, share with me how you feel about your emotions. I'm really curious, and I see you in the next video.